The following program documents a real homicide case, the investigation, the pursuit of justice, and the lasting impact on the loved ones left behind.
Hello?
To accept the 5 now.
Yo.
Yo.
What's up?
What up, man?
Me and my brother, we talked on the phone every single day while he was in federal prison for selling drugs. What you think about my career, man?
I'm proud of you, man. You know, I tell everybody in here, man, my brother a homicide detective, you know. He's always like, why the hell are you selling this?
I've talked to my brother plenty of times about him doing the wrong thing in life. But you look at what sent Reginald Jr. the wrong way. I can believe Mr. Crenshaw did everything he can for us to change his son's life about what he was doing, but it's hard.
Regardless of what happens, you still love your child. Knowing that Reginald was in the street, it was just my prayer that I would not wake up and hear about somebody murdering him. I've lost my son. I lost my son.
To me, the difference between what happened with my brother and Reginald two ways.
For those most affected by a homicide, the first 48 is just the beginning. This is the story of the fight for justice in the weeks, months, and years after the first 48.
Hello, please. I need the police, please.
What's going on here?
I don't know, my son. Somebody in his house might have been shot. The door is wide open. There's bullet holes in the window, and I don't want to go inside. Can you please send the police?
Yes, sir.
I look at life through different lenses with the work that I do. Growing up in the hood, you don't see all the doctors and lawyers and things like that. Drug selling is a problem. You saw mostly your dope boys, and those are the people that you looked up to, but I steered the other way from them.
We got sit down inside. Dad come over here, found the door open, and called us.
Kid in there is his son, Brandon.
One of the victims is 28-year-old Brandon Cadwell. He worked at a local hibachi restaurant and is survived by his parents and 3 brothers.
Going into homicide investigations, you're constantly thinking about the victim and the resolve for that victim, because the victim is the only person that doesn't have a seat at the table, the only person that doesn't have a voice.
Brandon was shot 5 times in the back of his head, his face, neck, and arm.
There's a bullet hole in the door right there where he would have been standing. And then the other guy on the right.
This particular crime scene was overwhelming. You've got not one victim, but 2.
31-year-old Reginald Crenshaw Jr. leaves behind his mother, father, and 3 children. He coached his daughter and nephew's Little League teams.
It hits Reginald personally, but I played against him in sports. In middle school ball, we played against each other, and also in high school.
Reginald was shot 8 times in his head and back.
There was a significant amount of blood. Then to look at the physical evidence, both inside and outside of the residence.
There's 7 shell casings in the hallway here. There's 2 in that room there. 40 S&W. Hey, Jermaine.
And on the driveway,
223. REM.
the team finds 7 rifle casings.
So you had one person with an assault rifle and another with a pistol, at least.
Yeah.
And they came up, and obviously they shot rifle rounds.
Yeah. We found 40 caliber casings inside, and then 223 caliber 5 casings that were outside that somebody had fired into the home through the window. I was thinking maybe one or both of the victims returned fire and ended up dying as a result of it.
Completely I'm going.
To see this level of carnage, something almost from a movie. Why did this happen? This wasn't an area that was ridden with gun violence. It was something that was very rarely seen. And so there was this pause. What's really going on?
Do you think they took anything? Or do you think it was just a hit?
I don't know.
As officers look for fingerprints and signs of DNA,
Y'all who arrest people.
Yeah.
one of Brandon's relatives, who also lives in the house, comes forward.
In the front seat.
When all this was happening, where were you at?
Highway 90. I was going to bring somebody some food. My friend called me and said, "Why is your window busted?" She said, "Your door is open." So she walked in and screamed. My ears still ringing.
And then you come back to the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if he hadn't left, that relative definitely could have been the third victim inside of the house. I'm hoping that he's gonna know what's going on and why.
We were chilling at the house.
He says earlier that night, he was hanging out with Brandon when Reginald had visitors.
This man might sell 10 pounds in a day. I swear to God, this dude walks around with $100,000 on him. It would be in a leather book bag, like a Gucci leather book bag. He claims to have over $1 million.
So one thing that goes in my mind is that, all right, was this a drug rip, or didn't know that it was some money in there that they was going in to get? Fast money is what people are attracted to. They don't want to go out and work a 8 to 5. So we'll grab some marijuana, grab cocaine, and go out and sell it. You don't need an education to do that. You just get up and you just do it.
Getting that information that Mr. Crenshaw sold drugs gave us an angle to start going in.
If he's got as much money as you saying that he's got, why is he staying here with you?
He does have a house. Somebody broke into it.
Brandon's relative, he was able to explain that his house was hot. So Reginald wanted to kind of change the environment that he operated in.
When did you first start staying at your house?
Hanging out 3-4 weeks. But he started being careless and letting mother pull up here in traffic. And that's our end result, is what happened. Brandon, he has no enemies. The dude might have shot Brandon as a casualty. He's a working man, a college kid. He ain't in the streets like that.
Brandon was perhaps an eyewitness, and I think that merely because he was there caused his death. And the fact that Mr. Crenshaw obviously decided to sell drugs in and of itself should not have warranted a death sentence. Once we were able to validate that bag was missing, there were no drugs inside of the house, we assumed at that point that it was a robbery.
Hey, Jermaine.
Yeah.
The team finds a phone in Reginald's pocket.
Where it relates to drug sales, you know that communication is going to be done through that phone. Anytime I investigate a case that's involving drugs, my mind goes to, this could have been my brother. My brother was selling cocaine, but of course it caught up to him. What saved him was him going to federal prison. If my brother was out during that time, I know for sure my brother. Now I'm off the headquarters. I'm looking to find any person that was in that phone saying that they were on their way to that residence. We knew that that was going to be our suspect.
Reginald Jr. was my second oldest son. You see, we started him off early with his bow tie, quite dapper. All the nieces and aunts and stuff called him Little Reginald, so I was the big Reginald. When Reggie was a kid, he loved sports. Basketball was his game. This was on the front page of the Mobile Press Register. He had a full basketball scholarship. It's a good feeling to watch your kid be successful in sports. They won the state championship, but probably about 6 or 7 of these young men are dead now, deceased. This generation, I call them the microwave generation. They want it quick and want it in a hurry. And, money is one thing that seemed to be the common denominator to that lifestyle. I just tried to provide every avenue I possibly could for him to have a positive roadmap to doing something that was productive and positive. But because of the drugs, I had to tell him, you couldn't stay here. Regardless of what happens, you still love your child. I used to hear my grandmother say her prayers that, Lord, don't let me bury my child. I know what she meant now. I've lost my son. I lost my son.
I'm hoping to see texts, phone calls, even a voicemail, anyone advising that they were coming to their residence.
7 hours since Reginald and Brandon were found dead.
I haven't ran across anything yet that says, that my victim was meeting up at the house with somebody. And when you get to a phone, you're like, I know it's something in here. And then it's not. That's the worst feeling because you know that this phone held all my answers.
You start to get nervous, you start to get anxious because you go into it wanting to resolve it for the family.
"17 hours into the investigation.
Hey man, ID just got a print back from inside the house. Call for one of the door jams. And it comes back to a guy named Larry Jackson.
Larry Jackson.
What we needed. His fingerprint could have been inside of the house from him participating in the murder, or it could have been inside of the house from him merely visiting. That fingerprint was absolute key in giving us a suspect to start looking at.
21-year-old Larry Jackson works at a shipbuilding company. He has no previous convictions.
If someone don't have priors, I don't say, well, this can't be my guy. He doesn't have any priors. In some cases, when you get in trouble, it has to start somewhere. Maybe you just haven't been caught yet in what you were doing. Looked up his last Metro, and it gave me a phone number. Let me see, 300.
Rogers now has the detailed records on Reginald's calls.
We wanted to see whether or not there was any communication between Larry Jackson and Reginald.
Yeah, 10:32.
Last night?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude. And then there's prints in the house? Fingerprint in the house?
At that point, we were under the impression that perhaps Larry contacted Reginald to buy or either sell drugs, and then this could have happened either around that time or sometime after.
Come back to the address.
We need to pick that dude up.
Ready? We're going to the house and I'm excited. I'm like, this guy has to explain why his fingerprints is in this house.
20 hours in.
Hey, how you doing?
Have y'all seen Larry? But we were able to make contact with a relative who had told us some good information.
He's shot in the knee.
Wow, he was shot. And we know that the residence where our victim was riddled with bullets.
Not only now do we have his fingerprints inside of the residence and then the communication, but now he sustained an injury from a gunshot.
He went to pick up his friend at his grandmother's house. And somebody just started shooting and he got shot.
The relative gives the name of the friend who took Larry to the ER.
If Larry's friend was with him and in a position to take him to the hospital, then perhaps he was with him at the time that this murder occurred.
Is he still at the hospital?
Yeah.
Right.
relative told us he was shot in the city of Pritchard.
But we ended up calling Pritchard and checking to see if there was any shots fired or anything during that time, and there wasn't.
Okay, so we talked to the front desk lady. They said that, oh, he had just gotten wheeled out by a friend. He must have gotten word that we were coming to the hospital.
They're gone. Didn't check out, just left. It hurts because we know that we're on their trail, and they beat us by maybe minutes. And I think that the relative gave them the heads up that we were coming.
Security combed the area. He's nowhere to be found.
Larry Jackson and his friend had a head start in running, but you can't.
It's now a person of interest.
His house is the team's next stop.
What I believe is that they come over there, pretty much rob this guy. Maybe it took too long, went inside, gunshots start going off and he gets shot also. Which it makes sense now, if you have another person in there with you and you got that many shell casings inside of the house, somebody else is bound to get hit. And Larry was the one that got hit.
Hopefully the friend is there. Hopefully the friend can give us some additional information.
Mobile police!
At this point, not only are we looking for Larry Jackson, we're looking for the friend.
20 hours in.
Mobile police!
Our perspective is the two is still together. So we went to the friend's house.
Nobody home.
It was frustrating, but we're talking about a case where there's a double murder. People don't just go back home. It was an indication that we were on the right path.
Seek some type of assistance from somebody.
After checking several hospitals for Larry and his friend, they come up empty.
It says to me that Larry Jackson was now on the run.
38 hours in, Rogers searches the database for the second suspect.
Doesn't have a criminal history. You know, he's doing from 2 years old.
We could not link him directly to the scene.
But Rogers could have enough to arrest Larry Jackson.
Like Mr. Rogers say, great day in the neighborhood, you know? So, got this murder warrant. Got it for murder and also shooting into an occupied dwelling. It means a lot to get the approval for a murder warrant for Larry Jackson. We believe that he was definitely our guy. So right now, we're gonna hand it over to the U.S. Marshals and hopefully they can pick him up.
But 7 days later, Mobile PD finds him first, back at his relative's house.
We believe he didn't act alone, so hopefully he give us who the other person was. Okay, we brought you in to talk about this incident, your injury and everything.
What happened to you, Larry?
I was shot.
Even though we had identified him as a suspect, we wanted to talk to him from this place of understanding his injury. We wanted to ease into the conversation about the double murder.
Why did this happen to you? Can walk me through that.
Well, I was wrong place, wrong time at a drug house.
He was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it was by his choice. He was at the crime scene.
Talk to us about that incident when you got shot.
I couldn't talk about that. My lawyer told me I can't talk about it.
Okay.
He's gonna tell you right now what you're being charged with. 2 counts of murder, okay? We made an arrest with Larry Jackson, but we know that there's more than just Larry Jackson.
We were trying to get information to build a case against the second suspect. 6 months go by.
And it was a long 6 months.
Then,
a witness called and said that they had information.
This was a friend of the second suspect. Hopefully the friend can give us what we needed to get us a warrant for the second suspect's arrest.
Him and his friends had went and robbed somebody. And I guess it didn't go so right. So I guess they had to kill, I think it was 2 people. No one was a third guy.
When the witness told us that potentially 3 people were involved, I was excited.
Have you ever seen that guy before? It's a big deal. Now we know that we have an additional person that we have to look for.
They kicked the door open. Larry went in the house first. We got over like $10,000.
And did you see that cash physically with your eyes? At that point, we knew what that witness had was pretty credible. It corroborated everything that the relatives gave us in the car.
I swear to God that
having our second suspect tell our witness exactly what happened gave us that murder warrant.
We're making some serious progress, but we couldn't find the second suspect.
Yeah. All right. People seen him walking around town.
I think that I had gotten comfortable due to the lapse of time, assuming that we were not looking for him.
You know, his luck's running out. We're gonna call the marshals and see if they can get him in custody. At some point, hide and seek has to end.
after 3 days of searching, federal agents find the second suspect parked in front of a local apartment building.
I'm excited. 6 months after we've interviewed our first suspect. So at this point, I've done all my homework.
We were hopeful that he would tell us his side of the story.
We know that you were over there with Larry. While you were there is what we expect you to talk to us about.
The second suspect has to explain why his name has come up in this double homicide.
He calls Larry Jackson by the name of Lito.
Who went over there to get weed?
Who was all in Leo's car?
It was just me and Lito.
And who else?
Josh Cole was in the driveway.
So we get the name Josh and we're thinking, okay, this can be our third suspect.
Lito was sitting in the house for a minute. I said probably about 5, 10 minutes. And then I heard a gunshot.
And who was shooting those gunshots?
Josh.
So what kind of gun Josh was shooting?
Some type of rifle.
This was an explanation for the 223 caliber casings that were fired outside. So at this point, we were pretty convinced that what he said happened.
Okay, where was Larry?
It was Josh who wounded Larry, according to the second suspect.
How? Tell me how.
When the guy opened the door.
He stated that Reginald, one of the victims, opened the door.
And they saw Joshua standing outside.
And brother shut the door. And Josh started shooting in the house, and that's when he shot Larry in the leg.
It's possible that Joshua shot into that residence, which started a chain reaction to what happened inside.
At that moment, it was complete chaos where everybody is trying to survive.
When I heard the shot, I was dead down the street, but then when I saw, oh, he alive.
He says he saw Larry fleeing the house.
I ran back, and that's when I took the hospital.
So tell me this, what was taken?
money and drugs.
Listen, did Larry tell you that he shot inside the house? He did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting the information that he provided was good for us, was good for the investigation.
I was second would be. I think he knew that he was in trouble.
So when did you fire your shot? I'm gonna get straight to the point. When did you fire your shots?
I swore to God on my good grave, I did not fire a shot, bro.
So you never went inside the house?
No, never went inside the house.
He did say he was there, but he was trying to distance himself, but he didn't know what was going on. I think his mind, well, if he didn't shoot, then he wouldn't be in trouble.
That's what I put that way back.
But people don't realize that they're as culpable, whether or not they were the driver or the shooters.
He's getting arrested and charged with 2 murders. There's a 3rd suspect that we're looking for. But at this point, we hand over both cases for Larry Jackson, our 2nd suspect, over to the DA's office.
Even though the arrest warrant may have been issued, it's not as cut and dry as you would think. We did not recover the firearm in this case. And you don't have an eyewitness that saw him shooting in the house. And any time that you have co-defendants in a case and one's testifying against another one, their testimony is light. They're looking at life without parole or the death penalty. So the stakes are high.
15 months after the double homicide, the prosecution prepares for trial.
You never know what a jury's going to do, and especially in capital cases when jurors a lot of times want to be convinced beyond all doubt.
Larry Jackson can take the stand and say, no, it was our 2nd suspect that fired those shots. I didn't have anything to do with it.
What we needed was, that missing piece of the puzzle, 2 people that are both pointing the finger at Larry, and not just one. There's a 3rd person that we have no idea who they are, where they are, what their involvement is. That's going to be a big problem.
We need to find our 3rd suspect. It's a big day. I mean, 15 years, Tony finally get to come home. We're going to pick up my brother from federal prison, and I am excited. Parking lot, and they'll drop him off. So he'll be coming from that end. Little Tony was about a year old when he went in, so only way he knows his dad is through jail calls and visitations. Yeah, listen. Yeah. Yeah, it's about time. It's about time, bro. What's up, man? About time, bro. What's up, man? What? Like you great, dude. Waking up, dude. My best friend's back. He don't know how to pop a trunk right now, so I gotta teach him how to open the trunk.
I'm eating a chicken sandwich right now, man. I had done chicken sandwich. Well, big thing anyway.
But that may be a coleslaw though. You open it up. I finally have my little brother and my big brother be around.
He's a little brother, but he's been more of a big brother to me. And he's held me down my whole 15 years in prison. And without him, no telling where I'll be right now. Family over everything.
Life lessons that Big Tony can give Little Tony, it could be very beneficial. His dad is able to tell him in prison. So Tony should have an upper hand on staying out of trouble.
My son, he lost his life as opposed to life in prison. Originally in prison, it would have been hard, but at least I know he was still breathing.
since the deaths of Brandon Cadwell and Reginald Crenshaw Jr.
We want to identify who this Josh is.
We're not very sure of a last name. All we have is the name of Josh.
At this point, we reached out to the second suspect and his attorney. That's when he said, hey, it's Josh Williams.
24-year-old Joshua Williams went to high school with Larry Jackson and the second suspect. He has no prior convictions.
I get excited now. You can check his cell phone records. And those cell phone records put all three suspects. That's enough for an actual murder warrant.
After 2 years without any leads,
I found out Joshua was living in Arkansas with other family members and then came back to Mobile just to visit. And he was picked up by police. So the thing is that we've been doing our homework. We have cell phone records with your location, your phone number in the same place at the same time when the incident happened. All right. Explain it.
All right. I'll link over with Larry.
Joshua says a couple of nights before the robbery, Larry was upset about some marijuana he'd bought.
When the quality it was supposed to be.
Okay.
I guess like the overcharged.
Gotcha.
Or something.
Larry wanted his money back. So they came up with a plan to try to go and rob Reginald Crenshaw for the money.
Go to like other side of Larry inside the house at this point.
He says so they want the victims to come outside so they can rob them there.
The dude opened the door. Shit. And Larry still was with them. We go to the window and I just see somebody. And I shot.
Shot your rifle? According to Joshua, after the shots happened, Joshua and our second suspect left that location, but then the second suspect goes back to pick up Larry Jackson from the house. What did he tell you was going on inside that house?
He told me that he tried to get his gun and fire back.
But Larry was in the house when those shots was fired.
Yeah.
Give it a second, all right?
That's enough at that point to really verify what the second suspect has said.
All right, this was going on, all right? You're gonna be charged with 4 counts of capital murder. Come on.
Now, the prosecution has a difficult decision to make.
In Alabama, you cannot try co-defendants together who have made statements against each other. You always have to pick who you want to go after first by determining culpability levels inside the house. And then Joshua Williams with a firearm. You have the second suspect where the vehicle would be. We know from the autopsies on both of the victims that every single bullet that was recovered from their body were from the same gun, .40 caliber. Larry Jackson was the only one that went inside the residence that night. And so he's the only one shooting the gun that killed them. Larry is the #1 target in this case. Larry Jackson's attorney reached out to me. Larry Jackson had changed his tune and was willing to enter a guilty plea.
Attorney Davis said, do you want to take this plea or do you want to go to court? I did not want it to be a trial. It would have been horrifying. All of the details and the facts about where he was shot at, and I just didn't want to go through that. I want to remember him like these pictures, not laying up at the coroner's office.
Intentional murder, one for the murder of Brandon Cadwell and one for the murder of Reginald Crenshaw Jr. I mean, that's big. So we have the second suspect, we still have to deal with. So he's agreed to testify truthfully against Joshua Williams. And in that case, we were willing to extend an offer. We amended the charge to a robbery in the first degree. And on the second suspect's plea day, he accepted responsibility. We are left with Joshua Williams. I talked extensively with his attorneys about plea negotiations.
We were definitely prepared to go to trial. We believe it was Larry and the second suspect that committed the murders. Joshua should never have been charged with capital murder or murder whatsoever. We felt very confident that if we took this case to trial, we could show that Josh of the two victims.
So we get there to his cousin's house. Larry's not there, so he go back, and that's when the murder happened.
Our position was Joshua removed himself from the scene before the murders took place. The prosecution had no evidence placing Joshua there at the time of the killings. No fingerprints from Joshua on the scene anywhere inside the house. No shell casings in the house, but Madison's version was different from ours.
Only Larry Jackson knows exactly what time the victims were killed. But we believed that it happened while the second suspect and Joshua Williams were still there. And I told the defense counsel that his own client's statements negated that defense. This is Joshua Williams' statement to law enforcement.
Shot.
Shot your rifle? How many times? 3.
He admitted to firing his rifle multiple times through the front window of the residence.
So we had several problems with the interrogation of Josh. Smoked a significant amount of marijuana prior to being arrested.
And he ends up being interrogated and admitting to things that he hadn't was admitting to.
If he wasn't in his right mind to waive his constitutional right to counsel, then everything he said during that interrogation could be thrown out.
We felt like we had quite a bit of ammunition for reasonable doubt.
We threw out certain theories. Would this work? How would this play to the jury?
From the ballistics evidence, it was pretty clear that all the bullets in both bodies from a single handgun.
And that's the one that was determined to be killed by Larry.
Exactly.
But didn't Joshua shoot one shot?
He did, but it was from a different gun. Joshua's bullet went into Larry's leg. So he may be guilty of assault on his co-defendant, but he's not guilty of murdering these two individuals.
I believe that when Joshua Williams had shot into the house, that's probably what started whatever went down inside. But if we can't come to an agreement, then we're forced to go to trial, which is a risk.
After months of negotiations,
We ultimately decided he'd enter a blind plea to the 2 counts of felony murder, and it would be up. You always wonder if you've made the right decision when you let someone plead guilty to a lesser sentence. To have the family supporting our decision helped give myself peace as a prosecutor.
I was satisfied. It had been going on for 6 to 7 years, and I just wanted to put a end to it and get justice from it. I never get a conversation I had with Reginald. I told myself, man, if you don't change your lifestyle, something bad gonna happen to you in the street. He said, well, we all got to die from something. That just floored me. To hear a young person say that just rings in my head.
Their stories are different. With my brother, federal prison saved his life.
In Detective Rogers' case, his brother, he's blessed that he's able around.
Yeah, this place nice, man.
But while he went the wrong way, he made sure that I wasn't doing the wrong things. And I thank him for that, because I definitely wouldn't be in the position that I'm in today if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, this was the younger me here.
Without seeing my brother's mistakes, without him actually going to federal prison, probably would have changed my life. I probably wasn't doing the wrong things. It's possible my life would have been different.
The abandoned farmhouse stood untouched for nearly 4 decades. Its broken windows faced an empty stretch of desert land in New Mexico, where the wind carried dust across the fields and buried the secrets left behind. For years, locals passed by the old property without looking twice. They believed the farmhouse was nothing more than another forgotten building. Another piece of history, slowly collapsing under the desert sun. But inside those walls was a clue that would reopen one of New Mexico's most disturbing cold cases. A clue that investigators believed had been waiting since 1987. And a clue that would finally reveal what happened to a young woman who vanished without a trace. Her name was Emily Carter. In the summer of 1987, Emily was 26 years old. She was known throughout the small community of Red Mesa as someone who never stayed silent when something felt wrong. She worked at a local newspaper office. She investigated small stories, community problems, missing funds, unanswered questions. To most people, she was simply a determined reporter trying to make a difference. But to certain people in the town, Emily had become a threat, because she had started asking questions nobody wanted answered. The last time anyone saw Emily alive was August 14th, 1987. It was a Friday evening. The temperature was still above 90 degrees as the sun disappeared behind the desert horizon. Emily left the newspaper office carrying a folder filled with documents. Her coworkers remembered something unusual about her that night. She seemed distracted. She kept checking the time. She kept looking toward the parking lot. One coworker later said Emily appeared like someone who was expecting trouble but refused to admit she was afraid. Before leaving, Emily made a strange comment. She told a colleague, "If I don't finish the story, someone else needs to." At the time, nobody understood what she meant. Those words would become one of the most important details in the entire investigation. Because hours later, Emily Carter disappeared. Her car was found abandoned on a dirt road outside town. The driver's door was unlocked. Her purse was still inside. Her wallet, her keys, her phone. Everything remained exactly where it should have been. Except Emily. There was no sign of a struggle. No obvious evidence. No witnesses. Only silence. The first investigators believed Emily had simply left voluntarily. Maybe she was meeting someone. Maybe she needed time away. Maybe she would return. But her family knew immediately something was wrong. Emily was not the type of person who disappeared. She called her mother every night. She never missed work without explanation. She never left people wondering where she was. Her disappearance created fear throughout Red Mesa, because everyone knew Emily had been investigating something. The question was what? In the days before she vanished, Emily had been writing about an abandoned farmhouse outside town, a property that had been empty for years. The farmhouse belonged to the Whitaker family, a name that appeared repeatedly in old county records. The official story was simple. The family abandoned the property in the late 1970s. The house was left behind. The land became forgotten. But Emily discovered something strange. The farmhouse appeared in several financial documents connected to local businesses. Money moved through the property. Ownership changed. Records disappeared. And nobody could explain why. Emily believed the farmhouse was connected to a larger story. A story involving missing funds and people with influence. She began collecting evidence. Documents. Photographs. Interviews. Notes. And according to her coworkers, she was close to publishing something major. Something that could damage powerful people in the community. But before she could release the story, she vanished. The investigation began immediately. Police searched the desert roads surrounding Red Mesa. They checked abandoned buildings. They questioned residents. They followed every possible lead. But the case quickly went cold. The biggest problem was the lack of evidence. Emily had disappeared without leaving behind a clear trail. There was no confirmed suspect, no confirmed motive, no confirmed location. Only theories. Some believed Emily discovered something dangerous. Others believed she ran away. Some believed she was the victim of a crime connected to her investigation. But without proof, every theory remained only a possibility. The abandoned farmhouse became the center of rumors. People in town whispered that Emily had visited the property before disappearing. Some claimed they saw her vehicle nearby. Others claimed they heard strange activity around the old building. But investigators found nothing. The farmhouse was searched. Nothing significant was recovered. No fingerprints. No documents. No evidence linking Emily to the location. The case remained frozen. Year after year, decade after decade, Emily's photographs stayed on missing person posters. Her family continued searching. Her mother kept Emily's bedroom exactly the same. The books, the photographs, the notes, everything remained untouched. Because somewhere inside that room was the belief that Emily would return. But time continued moving forward. The newspaper that Emily worked for eventually closed. Many of the original investigators retired. Witnesses moved away. Memories faded. And the case became another forgotten file buried inside a police archive. Until 2027, 40 years after Emily Carter disappeared, a construction crew arrived at the abandoned farmhouse. The property had been purchased by a developer planning to rebuild the land. Workers entered the old structure expecting to find nothing. Broken furniture, dust, old newspapers, evidence of a life abandoned long ago. But beneath the floorboards of the farmhouse basement, they discovered something unexpected. A sealed metal container, hidden between wooden beams, protected from moisture, protected from time. Inside were photographs, handwritten notes, and a small cassette tape. At first, nobody understood what they had found. Then investigators opened the files. They saw Emily Carter's handwriting. The same handwriting from the notes collected 40 years earlier. The same style. The same initials. The missing reporter had been inside the farmhouse, and she had left something behind. Something she wanted someone to find. The discovery shocked everyone involved. Because after 40 years of silence, Emily Carter was speaking again. And this time, she had left behind the evidence needed to finally uncover the truth. The sealed metal container transformed a forgotten, missing person investigation into the largest cold case reopened in New Mexico in decades. Forensic technicians handled every page with extraordinary care. 40 years had passed. The paper had yellowed. The ink had faded. The cassette tape looked fragile enough to fall apart with a single mistake. Yet the contents had survived, waiting, patiently, as if Emily Carter had hidden them, knowing someone would eventually return. The first document inside was not a newspaper article. It was a handwritten timeline. Every page contained dates, license plate numbers, property transfers, names connected by arrows, telephone numbers written in the margins. Emily had been building something far larger than a local corruption story. She had mapped relationships between businessmen, county officials, contractors, and landowners stretching across 3 counties. The farmhouse was not the destination. It was only the meeting place. Detectives realized Emily had been conducting an investigation with the discipline of a seasoned homicide investigator. Every claim was supported. Every name had documentation. Every accusation pointed toward evidence. Then they found a sentence written across the bottom of one page. If this disappears, they know I'm close. Silence filled the forensic laboratory. Because Emily had predicted exactly what happened. She knew someone was watching. She knew someone expected her to stop. She refused. The cassette tape became the next priority. The magnetic tape had deteriorated after decades underground. Audio specialists spent weeks restoring every second. At first, nothing. Only static. The sound of wind. Occasional distortion. Then voices emerged. Muffled. Distant. Impossible to identify immediately. Investigators increased the clarity frame by frame. A woman's voice appeared. Calm. Measured. It was Emily. There are 3 of them. Several seconds of silence followed. Then she continued, "They don't know I'm recording." The room froze. Emily had secretly recorded a meeting. The tape was incomplete. Large sections had been damaged. But enough remained to reveal fragments. A male voice said, "Nobody leaves with copies." Another answered, "She asked too many questions." Then Emily whispered, "I have everything." The recording ended abruptly. No scream. No struggle. Only silence. The tape immediately became the most significant evidence recovered since Emily disappeared. But investigators wanted to know where the meeting occurred. The background sounds offered clues. A generator. Loose sheet metal striking the wind. An old diesel engine. One detective recognized the pattern. Years earlier, he had worked maintenance jobs around abandoned ranches. The sounds matched equipment once used at isolated irrigation pumps throughout the desert. Suddenly, the search expanded. Every abandoned agricultural property connected to the investigation was mapped. Dozens appeared. Most had been demolished. Some had burned decades earlier. A handful still existed. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed surviving residents of Red Mesa. Many claimed they remembered nothing. Others refused to speak. But one elderly mechanic finally admitted something. Back in August of 1987, he repaired a pickup truck belonging to Harold Whitaker. The truck had fresh scratches. The bed contained unusual stains. Harold insisted they came from livestock equipment. The mechanic never believed him. He remembered another detail. Harold seemed terrified. Not angry. Not nervous. Terrified, as though something had happened that could destroy him. Harold Whitaker had died in 2008. His death ended any chance of questioning him directly. But investigators reopened every document connected to him. Property taxes, insurance records, business transactions. One payment immediately stood out. 3 days after Emily disappeared, Harold purchased several truckloads of concrete. There was no building permit, no renovation request, no explanation. Detectives searched aerial photographs taken during the late 1980s. The farmhouse foundation looked different before and after August 1987. One section of the basement floor had clearly been replaced. The original investigators searched the farmhouse, but they never broke through the concrete. They had walked directly above one of the most important hiding places in New Mexico cold case history. Ground-penetrating radar was brought into the farmhouse. The scans revealed several unusual voids beneath the basement. One cavity appeared directly below the newly poured concrete identified from old photographs. Excavation began slowly, every inch documented, every fragment preserved. Hours passed. Nothing. Then the excavation team uncovered cloth. Weathered. Buried beneath concrete and compacted soil. The entire site stopped. Forensic archaeologists carefully exposed the area. Not human remains. Not yet. Instead, they recovered a leather satchel. Inside were newspaper press credentials, a disposable camera, a notebook wrapped in plastic, and a single brass key. The press credentials belonged to Emily Carter. For 40 years, they had remained hidden beneath the farmhouse, meaning one undeniable fact had finally been proven. Emily reached the property. She never left with her belongings. The disposable camera was sent for forensic recovery. Most investigators assumed the film would be destroyed. Exposure, moisture, time, everything worked against it. But technology had advanced. Days later, specialists produced several usable images. The first photographs showed ordinary rooms inside the farmhouse. Broken furniture, collapsed ceilings, dust-covered walls. Nothing unusual. Then the final photographs appeared. One image showed several men standing around a wooden table. The faces were partially visible. Another showed stacks of folders marked with county property seals. Another captured license plates parked outside. Then came a last frame. Blurry. Taken while moving. Someone appeared to be running. A shadow entered the frame. A man's arm reached toward the camera. The photograph ended there. Detectives enlarged the image repeatedly. On the man's wrist was an unusual silver bracelet. Simple. Handmade. Decorated with distinctive turquoise stones. An investigator immediately recognized it. Photographs from 1987 showed local developer Victor Salazar wearing the exact same bracelet during multiple public events. Victor Salazar, a respected businessman, former Chamber of Commerce chairman, community donor, never once considered a suspect. Now his name entered the investigation. Financial records soon revealed Victor had invested heavily in land surrounding the abandoned farmhouse, land whose ownership depended upon documents Emily had been investigating. The conspiracy suddenly appeared much larger than anyone imagined. It wasn't only corruption. It was organized fraud worth millions, and Emily Carter had uncovered it almost entirely on her own. The discovery ignited panic among surviving individuals connected to the original transactions. Lawyers appeared, old business records disappeared, former employees suddenly claimed failing memories. Some refused interviews altogether. Others hired attorneys before detectives even contacted them. The reaction itself became evidence. People were afraid, not of accusations, of what investigators might still uncover. As detectives continued examining Emily's recovered notebook, they noticed one recurring phrase appearing almost every few pages. "Don't trust the sheriff." That sentence appeared 6 different times. Never explained, never expanded, only repeated. The sheriff in 1987 had overseen Emily's missing person investigation. He publicly promised to find her. He organized volunteer searches. He attended press conferences beside Emily's grieving parents. Now investigators questioned whether he had been searching for Emily or searching for the evidence she had hidden. Then another page fell from the notebook. It had been stuck to another sheet after 40 years underground. Across the top, Emily had written one sentence in large capital letters. "The farmhouse is only the first location." Detectives stared at one another. If Emily was telling the truth, then the abandoned farmhouse had never been the final destination. It was only the beginning. And somewhere else, another secret was still waiting to be discovered. The sentence changed everything. The farmhouse is only the first location. Investigators had spent months believing they were approaching the end of the mystery. Instead, Emily Carter had just pointed them toward another chapter. Another location, another secret, another piece of a puzzle that had survived 40 years beneath the New Mexico desert. The task force returned to Emily's recovered notebook. Every page was scanned, every handwritten mark enlarged, every coffee stain, every folded corner. Nothing was considered insignificant anymore. Emily had proven she never wrote random notes. Everything meant something. One detective noticed a pattern. Several pages contained tiny circles drawn beside certain dates. Not every date, only a handful. August 3rd, August 6th, August 11th, August 14th. Each date matched a location Emily had visited before disappearing. The newspaper office, the county courthouse, the abandoned farmhouse, and one place investigators had almost ignored, an abandoned railroad depot nearly 20 miles outside Red Mesa. The depot had been closed since the early 1970s. No businesses remained nearby. No homes. Only rusted tracks stretching across miles of empty desert. Detectives reviewed Emily's calendar recovered from her apartment. The depot appeared only once. Written in pencil. 3 simple words. "Meet after dark." No name. No explanation. No time. Just those 3 words. The investigation immediately shifted. Old aerial photographs showed the depot exactly as it appeared in 1987. Weathered buildings, collapsed storage sheds, a water tower, and one underground freight cellar forgotten beneath decades of drifting sand. The original investigators had never searched it. Back then, they believed Emily had disappeared somewhere closer to town. Nobody imagined she would travel into the desert after sunset. The task force arrived before sunrise. The depot felt frozen in time. Every window shattered, every wooden beam cracked by years of heat. The wind pushed sand through empty doorways. Silence covered everything. Forensic teams entered carefully. Metal detectors swept the ground. Ground-penetrating radar examined every foundation. For hours, nothing. Then one investigator found fresh disturbance beneath layers of old debris. Not recent. Old. Very old. Someone had deliberately covered part of the cellar entrance decades earlier. Excavation began. As workers removed collapsed timber, they uncovered a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The underground room measured barely 20 feet across. Dust covered every surface. Broken crates lined the walls. Nothing appeared unusual until investigators examined the floor. One section sounded hollow. The concrete had been poured at a different time, exactly like the farmhouse basement. The similarity was impossible to ignore. They broke through. Beneath the concrete was another hidden compartment. Inside rested 3 sealed boxes. Unlike the farmhouse container, these were military surplus ammunition cases. Watertight, undamaged, perfectly preserved. When the first case opened, detectives found dozens of audio cassettes. The second contained financial ledgers, property maps, photographic negatives. The third contained something nobody expected. Letters, dozens of them, addressed to Emily Carter, but never mailed. The handwriting belonged to different people. Anonymous. Some warned her to stop asking questions. Others begged her to expose the corruption. One letter stood apart. No signature. Only a single sentence. They already know where you live. The investigators immediately understood. Emily had been receiving threats long before she vanished. But she never reported them. Why? The answer appeared inside her personal journal. I can't go to local law enforcement anymore. I don't know who's involved. I have to finish before they realize what I found. The realization sent chills through the investigation team. Emily believed the conspiracy had already infiltrated the people responsible for protecting her. She was completely alone. Forensic analysts restored another cassette. Unlike the first recording, this one was remarkably clear. Emily had apparently recorded personal notes after each day of her investigation. Her voice remained calm, professional, but exhaustion slowly crept into each entry. August 8th. They followed me home again. August 10th. I counted the same truck 3 times today. August 12th. I think someone entered my apartment. Then came August 13th. The final complete recording before she disappeared. I finally know why the farmhouse matters. Long pause. They're using abandoned properties to move original county records before replacing them with fake copies. Another pause. If I'm right, they've been doing this for years. The detectives listened in complete silence. Emily had uncovered systematic evidence tampering. Entire property histories altered. Ownership rewritten. Legal records replaced. The corruption extended far beyond stolen land. It questioned every major transaction across the region. The implications were enormous. The audio continued. I have enough evidence now. I just need one witness. That witness became the next mystery. Who had Emily planned to meet? Who convinced her to travel to the farmhouse? And who never came forward? Investigators searched the recovered letters again. One envelope contained only initials. J.R. Inside was a map, hand-drawn, leading from the farmhouse. Emily had followed it, exactly as planned. On the back someone had written, if anything happens, everything is here. The depot had been Emily's insurance policy. She separated the evidence. One collection beneath the farmhouse, another beneath the depot. She understood something detectives now admired deeply. Never hide everything in one place. If one location was discovered, the other might survive. She had been planning several moves ahead, even while people hunted her. The recovered financial ledgers exposed millions of dollars in fraudulent land transfers, fake signatures, forged deeds, illegal mineral rights, entire ranches quietly changing ownership through falsified county records. The conspiracy reached back into the late 1960s, nearly 20 years before Emily disappeared. This wasn't a single crime. It was an organized criminal enterprise, operating in plain sight, protected by respectability, protected by silence. Then forensic analysts examining one ledger noticed fingerprints preserved inside dried adhesive near a folded page. The prints were faint, almost invisible. Modern chemical processing slowly revealed ridge detail. Enough for comparison. Everyone waited. The laboratory worked overnight. The result arrived the following afternoon. One fingerprint belonged to Victor Salazar. The second did not match anyone previously connected to the investigation. Instead, it matched former Sheriff Daniel Brooks, the very man who led the original search for Emily Carter. The room fell silent. Detectives immediately reopened every report Brooks had ever signed, every witness interview, every evidence log, every search warrant. Within hours, they discovered something impossible to explain. Entire pages were missing from Emily's original case file. Witness statements had vanished. Evidence inventory numbers skipped without explanation. Photographs referenced in reports no longer existed. The investigation had not merely failed. It had been dismantled from within. And suddenly, the abandoned farmhouse no longer seemed like the darkest place in the story, because the real crime scene might have been sitting inside the sheriff's office. From the very beginning, the discovery of Sheriff Daniel Brooks' fingerprint shattered the investigation. For 40 years, Brooks had been remembered as the man who stood beside Emily Carter's family, the man who promised cameras that every lead would be followed, the man who organized volunteers to search the desert, the man who assured the public that justice would come. Now investigators faced an impossible possibility. What if the man leading the search had known exactly where not to look? The original case files were removed from the county archives and transferred to the state crime laboratory. Every document was examined, every signature verified, every missing page documented. The deeper investigators looked, the more disturbing the pattern became. Critical witness interviews had disappeared. Search maps had been altered. Evidence numbers had been reassigned. Entire sections of reports had been rewritten. Someone hadn't simply made mistakes. Someone had carefully redirected the investigation. One detective described it in a single sentence. Someone didn't hide the evidence. They hid the path to the evidence. That observation changed everything. The task force stopped asking who killed Emily Carter. Instead, they began asking who protected the people responsible. The answer appeared to be growing larger by the day. Former deputies who served under Brooks were interviewed one by one. Most remembered very little. Time had erased details. Memories had faded. But one retired deputy finally admitted something he had never told anyone. 3 days after Emily disappeared, Brooks ordered every deputy to stop searching near the abandoned railroad depot. No explanation. No discussion. Just a direct order. At the time, nobody questioned him. He was the sheriff. His decisions were final. Now that decision looked deliberate. The deputy also remembered another strange incident. Late one night, Brooks arrived alone at the evidence room. He stayed nearly 2 hours. No warrant. No technician. No documentation. The following morning, several pieces of evidence were listed as misplaced during processing. Nobody investigated. Nobody challenged the sheriff. The investigation widened. State prosecutors obtained financial records belonging to Daniel Brooks. For decades, nothing unusual appeared. Then analysts examined transactions from 1986 through 1988. Several unexplained cash deposits appeared shortly before and after Emily disappeared. The amounts were too large to ignore. None matched his official salary. None had legitimate explanations. The money trail eventually led to Victor Salazar. Payments disguised as consulting fees, construction reimbursements, property evaluations, names changed, companies dissolved, paperwork rewritten. But the money remained. The conspiracy suddenly had financial proof. Investigators believed Brooks had been paid to protect the operation. Emily had unknowingly threatened everyone involved. Not just businessmen, not just land developers, law enforcement, county officials, people trusted by the entire community. Meanwhile, forensic experts continued restoring the remaining cassette tapes found beneath the railroad depot. Tape number 6 contained another field recording. Emily sounded out of breath. Wind rushed across the microphone. "I think they're following me." She paused. "They know about the notebook." More footsteps. A car door slammed somewhere nearby. "I can't go home." Static interrupted the recording. Then Emily whispered something investigators replayed hundreds of times. "If anything happens, that the old church." The recording ended. The words immediately became the investigation's newest lead. The old church. Nobody had mentioned a church before. Detectives searched Emily's notes again. Hidden in the margin of a grocery receipt was a single abbreviation. SMC. Local historians identified it immediately. St. Michael's Chapel, an abandoned adobe church nearly 15 miles south of Red Mesa. Closed since the early 1980s. Almost forgotten. The chapel sat alone on a rocky hillside overlooking miles of desert. The building had partially collapsed. The roof barely remained. Inside, dust covered broken wooden pews. Sunlight poured through holes in the ceiling. At first glance, nothing appeared remarkable. Then investigators noticed fresh mortar beneath the old stone altar. Not fresh by modern standards. Fresh compared to the century-old construction. Ground-penetrating radar revealed another hidden cavity. The third hidden cache. Emily had prepared multiple insurance policies. She never trusted a single hiding place. Excavation uncovered a weatherproof document tube. Inside was one item. A VHS videotape. The label read simply, "Only if I disappear." Silence filled the room. No one spoke. The tape was transported under armed evidence escort. 40 years had passed. The magnetic film was fragile. Specialists spent days stabilizing it before attempting playback. Finally, the screen flickered to life. The image was grainy, shaking. Emily was sitting inside her apartment. She looked directly into the camera. Not frightened. Focused. She began speaking. "If you're watching this." Then something happened. She took a slow breath. "I've kept copies everywhere. They can destroy one. They can't destroy all of them." She smiled briefly. The smile lasted only a second. Then it disappeared. "I know who's involved now." She picked up several photographs, held them toward the camera. The faces were difficult to recognize because of poor video quality. But investigators identified several immediately. Victor Salazar, Daniel Brooks, Harold Whitaker. Then Emily held up one final photograph. "This man, that is the reason nobody will believe me." The image blurred as she moved it closer. Technicians froze the frame, enhanced it, sharpened every detail. The face slowly emerged. Not a businessman, not a deputy, not a county employee. It belonged to Judge Arthur Holloway, the senior district judge who had approved nearly every disputed land transfer during the 1980s. The revelation stunned everyone. The corruption had reached the courthouse, the very institution responsible for justice. Emily continued speaking on the tape. "I thought this was about land. It isn't. It's about control. They've been rewriting ownership for years. If anyone challenges them, that they disappear." She looked toward the apartment window. Someone outside caught her attention. Her expression changed instantly. Calm became concern. Concern became fear. She reached toward the camera. The recording ended abruptly. No explanation. No farewell. Only black screen. Investigators sat motionless. For the first time in 40 years, Emily Carter had personally told them exactly what she had uncovered. And she had named people nobody ever suspected. But one detail troubled investigators more than anything else. At the very end of the video, just before the image disappeared, a clock on Emily's wall showed the time. 7:42 p.m. According to the original police timeline, Emily had already left work by then, meaning one uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. Someone had changed the official timeline of Emily Carter's final day. And if the timeline had been falsified, then the last person officially reported to have seen Emily alive may never have been the last person at all. The clock changed everything. For 40 years, investigators believed they knew Emily Carter's final movements. She left the newspaper office. She drove toward the abandoned farmhouse. She disappeared. That timeline appeared in every report, every television broadcast, every newspaper headline, every anniversary article. But the videotape proved it was wrong. At 7:42 p.m., Emily was still inside her apartment. Alive. Calm. Recording evidence. The official timeline placed her miles away. Someone had deliberately rewritten history. The task force immediately began reconstructing her final hours from the beginning. No assumptions. No shortcuts. Only evidence. They collected every surviving receipt, telephone record, utility bill, bank transaction, witness statement, traffic report, everything. Modern digital mapping software recreated every confirmed movement Emily made during the last 72 hours of her life. The results exposed enormous gaps. Several witness statements used to establish the original timeline had never been signed. Others had been typed by the sheriff himself. One interview supposedly conducted with a gas station clerk turned out to be impossible. The clerk had been on vacation that week. Another witness listed in the report had died 2 years before Emily disappeared. The realization horrified investigators. The case file had not simply been manipulated. Large portions had been manufactured. The false timeline accomplished one important objective. It kept detectives away from Emily's apartment, away from St. Michael's Chapel, away from the railroad depot, away from every place where Emily had hidden evidence. Someone understood exactly what they were doing. The apartment building was revisited for the first time in decades. Most of the original structure still stood, renovated, repainted, occupied by new tenants. But one elderly maintenance worker still remembered Emily. His memory remained remarkably sharp. He told investigators something he had never reported. On the night Emily disappeared, he saw an unfamiliar black Lincoln sedan parked outside the building. Not once, twice. The same car returned nearly an hour later. The original investigators never asked him about it. He assumed it wasn't important. Now it became essential. Vehicle registration records from 1987 were retrieved from state archives. Only 3 black Lincoln Town cars were registered in the county that summer. One belonged to Judge Arthur Holloway. Another belonged to Victor Salazar's construction company. The third belonged to the sheriff's department. 3 vehicles. 3 people already connected to Emily's investigation. The pattern became impossible to dismiss. Detectives searched Emily's apartment one final time using forensic methods unavailable in 1987. Behind a loose electrical outlet, they found something astonishing. A tiny folded piece of photographic film, hidden so carefully it escaped discovery for 40 years. Specialists developed the image. It showed Emily standing beside another person. Only half of his face appeared in the frame. But investigators immediately recognized him. Deputy Sheriff Michael Reeves, one of Daniel Brooks' closest officers. Until that moment, Reeves had never appeared anywhere in the investigation. He retired quietly in the late 1990s. Still alive, still living less than 50 miles from Red Mesa. Detectives visited him the following morning. Michael Reeves opened the door slowly. The moment he saw the investigators holding Emily's photograph, his expression changed. Not confusion, recognition, fear. He invited them inside without argument. For nearly an hour he denied everything. Denied knowing Emily. Denied visiting her apartment. Denied involvement. Then investigators placed the recovered photograph on the table. Reeves stared at it. His shoulders collapsed. 40 years of silence finally cracked. I wasn't supposed to be there. Those were his first truthful words. He admitted meeting Emily secretly several times. Not to threaten her. To warn her. Emily had discovered corruption spreading through county government. Reeves believed her. He wanted to help. But he was terrified. He claimed Daniel Brooks controlled every major investigation. Anyone questioning him risked losing everything. Their career. Their reputation. Possibly their life. Reeves admitted giving Emily confidential records. Internal documents. Evidence showing case files had been altered long before her disappearance. Emily copied everything. She promised never to reveal his identity. The investigators asked the question that mattered most. What happened on August 14th? Reeves closed his eyes. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he answered. I told her not to go. He explained that Emily received a telephone call around 8 o'clock. Someone claimed they wanted to expose the entire operation. They offered names, documents, proof. The meeting location was the abandoned farmhouse. Reeves begged her not to trust the caller. Emily believed it was finally the breakthrough she needed. She left anyway. The investigators asked who made the call. Reeves looked toward the window. His voice became barely audible. The judge. The room fell silent. Judge Arthur Holloway had personally arranged the meeting. Not to confess, not to cooperate, to lure Emily into isolation. Reeves admitted he tried following her. He arrived too late. By the time he reached the farmhouse, several vehicles were already leaving. He stayed hidden, afraid, cowardly, watching. He never reported what he saw. He convinced himself no one would believe him. That silence haunted him for 40 years. Investigators pressed further. What vehicles? Reeves described 3. Victor Salazar's pickup, Harold Whitaker's truck, and the Sheriff's Department Lincoln. The same 3 vehicles, now linked through documentary evidence. Then Reeves revealed one final detail. As the vehicles disappeared into the desert, he saw another car parked behind the farmhouse, a blue Chevrolet sedan. It belonged to Emily, but one thing stood out. Its headlights remained on, as if whoever left it expected to return within minutes. They never did. Reeves lowered his head. I should have called someone. I should have walked inside. I should have done something. Instead, he drove away. The investigators left his home carrying the first eyewitness testimony describing the night Emily disappeared. Not perfect, not complete, but enough to establish probable cause against surviving members of the conspiracy. That evening, forensic analysts completed enhancement of the final damaged cassette recovered beneath the railroad depot. The recording lasted only 48 seconds. Most of it was static. Then, a woman's voice whispered only 6 words. Not Emily. Someone else. Someone terrified. She said, "They're taking her to the canyon." The tape ended. No names. No location. Only one final clue. A canyon, hidden somewhere in the endless deserts of New Mexico. A place investigators had never searched. A place that might still hold the final answers. After 40 years of silence, the words echoed through the forensic laboratory. They're taking her to the canyon. 48 seconds. 6 words. 40 years of silence. Investigators suddenly had something they had never possessed before. A destination. Not a confirmed location. Not yet, but a direction. The problem was obvious. Northern New Mexico was filled with canyons. Hundreds of them. Some stretched for miles. Others were nothing more than dry ravines cutting across the desert. Searching every canyon would take years. The task force needed something more specific. They returned to everything Emily had left behind. Every map, every receipt, every photograph, every cassette, every handwritten note. One analyst noticed something unusual. Emily rarely used full-place names. Instead, she relied on symbols. Small triangles, circles, short abbreviations. One symbol appeared more than any other. A small red triangle beside the letters RC. Nobody knew what it meant, until an older detective quietly spoke. Red Rock Canyon. The room turned toward him. Red Rock Canyon lay nearly 30 miles west of the abandoned farmhouse. Remote, almost inaccessible. In 1987, very few roads reached the area. The canyon was used mainly by ranchers and hunters. No permanent residents. No regular patrols. If someone wanted to disappear without witnesses, it was the perfect place. The task force immediately organized a search. Helicopters surveyed the cliffs. Drones mapped the terrain. Ground teams moved through dry riverbeds where decades of wind had reshaped the landscape. Nothing. Hour after hour. Only rock. Sand. Silence. Then a drone operator noticed something unnatural. Near the base of a cliff stood the remains of an old storage shed, almost completely collapsed, hidden beneath mesquite trees. The structure did not appear on modern maps. Investigators reached it shortly before sunset. The wooden walls had fallen inward. The roof barely existed. Inside, there was almost nothing. Broken tools, rusted barrels, animal nests. But beneath one corner of the floor, ground-penetrating radar revealed another anomaly. Not concrete, not metal. A large underground cavity. Excavation began immediately. The work continued through the night under portable floodlights. After nearly 6 hours, archaeologists uncovered an old wooden hatch, carefully sealed, almost invisible beneath layers of dirt. When they opened it, cold air rushed upward. Below was a narrow chamber carved directly into the sandstone. No one had entered it in decades. Flashlights swept across the darkness. The walls were lined with old crates. Most were empty. One remained closed. Investigators approached slowly. The lid creaked as it opened. Inside was another weatherproof container, smaller than the others, wrapped in thick canvas. Everyone expected documents, photographs, perhaps another recording. Instead, They found a silver necklace. Emily's mother identified it within minutes. Emily wore it every single day. There was no doubt. Emily had been inside the chamber. The search intensified. Every inch of the underground room was documented. Near the back wall, forensic specialists discovered faint traces of dried blood preserved in cracks between the stones. Time had almost erased it. Almost. Modern DNA technology recovered a partial profile. Several anxious weeks passed. Then the laboratory delivered the result. The DNA belonged to Emily Carter. Silence spread through the investigation headquarters. For 40 years, Emily had officially remained a missing person. Now, investigators knew something heartbreaking. She had reached Red Rock Canyon. The chamber had become part of the crime scene. But one crucial question remained unanswered. Where was Emily? The chamber contained no human remains. Only blood, the necklace, and another clue. On the inside of the weatherproof container lid, someone had carved a single sentence. Truth survives longer than fear. The investigators immediately recognized the handwriting. Emily, even after everything, she had continued leaving messages. The words strengthened everyone's belief that she expected someone to find this place. She refused to let the story disappear with her. The forensic team continued examining the chamber. Near the entrance, one specialist noticed unusual tire impressions preserved beneath compacted layers of dirt. The tracks had fossilized over decades. Barely visible, laser imaging reconstructed the pattern. The tread matched a heavy-duty pickup manufactured during the mid-1980s. Exactly the same model driven by Victor Salazar. Another coincidence? Or another piece fitting perfectly into the growing picture? Meanwhile, detectives returned to Deputy Michael Reeves. This time they asked about Red Rock Canyon. His reaction was immediate. His face turned pale. He whispered one sentence. "I prayed nobody would ever find that place." Reeves admitted following the convoy farther than he had previously confessed. He stayed hundreds of yards away, hidden among the rocks. He watched several men enter the storage shed. They remained inside for almost an hour. When they finally left, only 3 men came back out. Emily never appeared. Reeves claimed fear controlled him. He convinced himself she was already dead. He drove away. He never returned. The confession devastated investigators. Not because it proved the crime, because it proved someone witnessed the aftermath and stayed silent. 40 years of unanswered questions might have ended in 1987. Instead, they became a cold case. The district attorney prepared new indictments. Victor Salazar, Judge Arthur Holloway, former Sheriff Daniel Brooks, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, kidnapping, murder. Even though 2 principal suspects had died years earlier, prosecutors intended to expose the entire conspiracy in open court. Emily deserved the truth. Her family deserved the truth. The public deserved the truth. But before charges could be announced, forensic anthropologists made another discovery. Less than 200 yards from the underground chamber, cadaver dogs alerted near a dry wash at the base of the canyon. Excavation crews carefully removed layers of sand and stone. Hours passed. Then fragments of clothing appeared. Blue denim, weathered leather, buttons matching those worn by Emily in photographs taken the week she disappeared. The excavation slowed to almost nothing. Every movement documented. Every grain of soil preserved. As dawn broke over Red Rock Canyon, investigators uncovered human remains. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Nobody celebrated. Nobody spoke. After 40 years, Emily Carter had finally come home. DNA confirmation arrived several days later. The identification was absolute. The missing reporter, the forgotten voice, the young woman who refused to abandon the truth. She had been found, but the examination uncovered one final surprise. Tucked inside the lining of Emily's denim jacket, forensic specialists discovered a tiny folded piece of paper. Protected from moisture, protected from time, protected by chance. When investigators carefully unfolded it, they found only one handwritten sentence. A sentence that would transform the entire case once again. "I know who ordered it." The sentence was only 5 words. 5 words written on a fragile piece of paper hidden inside Emily Carter's jacket. "I know who ordered it." But those 5 words carry the weight of 40 years. Because until that moment, investigators believed they understood the crime. They believed they understood the motive. They believed they understood the people involved. But Emily's final message suggested something far more dangerous. Someone had not simply participated. Someone had given the order. Someone had been above everyone else. The investigation shifted again. The task force returned to Emily's final evidence. They stopped looking for what happened. They started looking for who controlled it. The handwritten note was examined under advanced forensic lighting. At first glance, it contained nothing else. No name, no date, no location, only the sentence. But Emily was known for leaving hidden patterns. Investigators compared the paper with her other notes. The type, the folds, the ink, everything. Then one detail appeared. On the back of the paper was a faint impression, writing pressed through from another sheet above it, a message that had never been visible. Using specialized imaging technology, analysts reconstructed the hidden words. 3 letters appeared, H, the initials of Judge Arthur Holloway. The discovery sent shockwaves through the entire investigation. Holloway had already been identified in Emily's video. He had already been connected to suspicious property transactions. Now Emily's final note appeared to point directly at him. But investigators needed more. A theory was not enough. A suspicion was not enough. They needed proof. They returned to the financial records. Every company connected to Holloway was examined. Every property transfer. Every legal document. Every signature. A pattern emerged. The judge had approved hundreds of questionable land deals over nearly 2 decades. But the most suspicious transactions all shared one detail. They involved abandoned properties. Properties with missing owners. Properties where records could be altered without immediate attention. The abandoned farmhouse. The railroad depot. Red Rock Canyon storage land. All connected. All controlled through the same network. Emily had not discovered a simple fraud scheme. She had uncovered a machine. A system designed to steal land quietly. And anyone who threatened to expose it became a problem. Investigators studied Holloway's career. Publicly, he was respected. A symbol of stability. He donated to charities, spoke at community events, received awards, but privately, he controlled decisions that shaped millions of dollars in property. The image of the honorable judge began collapsing. Then investigators discovered something even more disturbing. The day before Emily disappeared, Judge Holloway accessed a confidential court file. Emily's name appeared in the records. He knew she was investigating. He knew what she had found. He knew where she was looking. The question became simple. How? Who told him? The answer came from a forgotten phone record. A call made from the sheriff's office. 30 minutes after Emily interviewed Deputy Reeves. Sheriff Daniel Brooks. The receiver, Judge Arthur Holloway. The 2 men had denied communicating about Emily. The records proved they lied. The investigation now had a direct connection. Law enforcement, the courts, business interests, all connected by one case. But one question remained. Who actually killed Emily? Because while Holloway appeared to be the person who ordered the operation, someone else carried it out. Investigators returned to the physical evidence from Red Rock Canyon. The blood, the clothing, the vehicle impressions, the hidden chamber. DNA testing had already confirmed Emily was there. Now scientists searched for additional profiles. After weeks of analysis, they found a second DNA sample. Small, damaged, but usable. The sample belonged to a male. The comparison process began. First against known suspects. Victor Salazar. No match. Daniel Brooks. No match. Arthur Holloway. No match. Investigators were left with a mystery. Someone else was present. Someone whose identity remained hidden for 40 years. Then an old photograph provided the answer. The image was recovered from Emily's apartment. Originally ignored. A simple community event photo. A fundraiser held in 1986. Emily stood among several local officials. Investigators zoomed into the background. A man stood behind Judge Holloway, almost unnoticed, almost invisible. The same man appeared in another photograph from Victor Salazar's company records, and another from the sheriff's office. His name was Thomas Vance, a county maintenance supervisor, not a powerful figure, not a public official, someone most people would never remember. But Thomas Vance had one important connection. He maintained several abandoned properties owned through the fraudulent land network, including the farmhouse, the railroad depot, and the storage shed near Red Rock Canyon. Investigators searched his history. A criminal record appeared, minor offenses, nothing serious. But one detail stood out. In 1988, shortly after Emily disappeared, Thomas Vance abruptly left New Mexico. He moved to Arizona, changed jobs, changed his name slightly, and disappeared from public records. The task force located him living under a different identity. Now 70 years old, when detectives arrived at his home, he did not seem surprised. He simply looked at them and said, "It took you long enough." The interview lasted 9 hours. At first, Vance denied everything. Then detectives placed Emily's recovered evidence on the table. The photograph, the DNA report, the property records, the hidden documents. Slowly, the wall around him collapsed. He admitted being present at the farmhouse. He admitted transporting items. He admitted helping destroy evidence. But he insisted on one thing. "I didn't make the decision." Investigators asked who did. Vance stared at the floor. Then he spoke a name that confirmed Emily's final message. Arthur Holloway. According to Vance, Holloway feared Emily's investigation would expose decades of corruption. He arranged the meeting. He promised Emily they would provide documents proving everything. But it was a trap. Emily arrived believing she had found an ally. Instead, she found the people she was trying to expose. Vance claimed he never intended for Emily to die. He said the confrontation became violent. He said panic took over. He said Holloway ordered them to make the problem disappear. Those words became the turning point. Because after 40 years, investigators finally understood the structure of the crime. Holloway planned it. Brooks protected it. Salazar funded it. Vance carried it out. And Emily Carter was the person who almost brought them all down. But there was still one mystery. One question investigators could not answer. Why did Emily continue leaving clues even after she knew she was in danger? Why did she keep fighting? The answer came from her final journal entry. The last words she ever wrote. A sentence that revealed exactly who Emily Carter was. If the truth survives, they don't win. The final journal entry became the sentence that defined Emily Carter's entire story. If the truth survives, they don't win. Investigators read those words again and again, not because they revealed new evidence, but because they revealed Emily herself. She knew she was in danger. She knew powerful people wanted her silent. She knew the investigation around her had been compromised. Yet she continued. She kept recording. She kept documenting. She kept hiding evidence. Because Emily believed one thing above everything else. Truth was stronger than fear. The discovery of Thomas Vance's confession changed the case forever. For the first time, investigators had a direct witness who could explain what happened inside the abandoned farmhouse. But his story raised new questions. A confession was only the beginning. The prosecution needed evidence that could survive in court. They needed to prove not only that Emily was targeted, but that the entire operation had been planned. The investigation moved into its final phase. Every piece of evidence collected over 40 years was placed on a timeline. The farmhouse, the railroad depot, St. Michael's Chapel, Red Rock Canyon. Each location represented a different stage of Emily's attempt to preserve the truth. Each location showed how carefully she planned. Emily understood something many investigators did not. Evidence could disappear. People could lie. Records could be destroyed. But if the truth existed in multiple places, it became almost impossible to erase. The task force created a complete map of Emily's investigation. It showed how she moved from a simple newspaper story into a discovery that threatened an entire network. It began with a missing property file, a small document that should have been routine. But Emily noticed something unusual. A signature did not match. A date had been altered. A transfer happened too quickly. Most people would have ignored it. Emily did not. She followed the mistake. That mistake led to another, then another, until she discovered years of manipulation hidden behind official paperwork. The evidence revealed that abandoned properties were intentionally targeted. When owners died or disappeared, fraudulent claims were created. Old records were replaced. New owners appeared. Millions of dollars changed hands. The system worked because everyone involved played a different role. Businessmen provided money. Officials approved documents. Law enforcement removed obstacles. The courts gave everything legal protection. It was a perfect machine, until Emily Carter found the crack. The prosecution reviewed every surviving transaction connected to Judge Arthur Holloway. The results were devastating. Over 200 property transfers showed suspicious irregularities. Dozens involved false ownership claims. Several involved properties connected to people who had challenged the system. Emily was not the first person to notice. She was simply the first person who refused to stop. Investigators discovered several older complaints buried in county records. Residents who questioned land purchases. Families who claimed their documents had been altered. Business owners who reported missing files. Every complaint had one thing in common. Nothing happened. Every investigation ended quickly. Every question disappeared. The corruption had survived because people learned that speaking up was dangerous. Emily broke that pattern. She gave those forgotten victims a voice. The discovery of those old complaints changed public perception. For decades, people viewed Emily as a reporter who accidentally got caught in something dangerous. Now they understood. She had uncovered a hidden history of abuse. She was not simply investigating a crime. She was exposing years of injustice. Meanwhile, detectives continued questioning Thomas Vance. The older man revealed more details about the night Emily disappeared. He described arriving at the farmhouse after receiving instructions from Holloway. He said the judge wanted Emily's evidence, not Emily herself. At first, the goal was to recover her documents, destroy her recordings, erase her investigation. But Emily refused. She had already sent copies to other locations. She told them that even if they took everything from her, the truth would still come out. Vance admitted that statement changed the situation. The people inside the farmhouse realized they could no longer control the evidence. Emily had prepared for them. She had expected betrayal. She had expected someone to try to silence her. And she had created a backup plan. That was when Holloway gave the order. Vance described the moment as the one decision that could never be undone. He said Holloway looked at Emily and said, "Nobody can know what you found." Those words became one of the most chilling details in the investigation, because they proved something important. Emily was not killed because of a misunderstanding, not because of an accident, not because of panic. She was killed because someone wanted the truth buried. The trial preparations began, but before prosecutors could move forward, they faced a problem. Judge Arthur Holloway had died years earlier. Sheriff Daniel Brooks had also died. Victor Salazar passed away in 2019. The three most powerful figures in the conspiracy would never stand before a jury. For Emily's family, that fact was painful. Justice would never look exactly the way they imagined. There would be no courtroom confrontation, no final questions, no chance to hear explanations. But prosecutors believed the remaining evidence still mattered, because the goal was not only punishment, it was history. The truth needed to be officially recorded. The people who had spent decades denying Emily's story could no longer rewrite it. The case became a symbol of something larger, a reminder that investigations do not expire, evidence does not forget, and time does not always protect the guilty. As the trial approached, Emily's family received one final package. It arrived anonymously. Inside was a small notebook, no return address, no explanation. The handwriting was immediately recognizable. Emily's. Her mother held the notebook with shaking hands. The pages contained personal thoughts, fears, plans. But near the end was something nobody expected. A final entry written the night before she disappeared. It contained only 3 lines. "Tomorrow I meet them. They think they can scare me. They don't understand who they are dealing with." For the first time in 40 years, Emily's family saw not only the victim, but the person she truly was: brave, determined, unwilling to surrender. The notebook ended with one final sentence, a sentence that investigators believed explained everything about Emily Carter. "The truth is not mine to keep. It belongs to everyone." And after 4 decades, The truth was finally returning to the people who had waited for it. The courtroom was silent when the evidence was presented for the first time. 40 years of unanswered questions. 40 years of speculation. 40 years of a family waiting for a daughter who never came home. All of it came down to the evidence placed before a judge and jury. The forgotten recordings. The hidden documents. The photographs. The fingerprints. The DNA. The final words Emily Carter left behind. For decades, her disappearance had been described as a mystery. Now investigators were showing the world that it had never been a mystery. It had been a carefully constructed cover-up, a crime protected by power, protected by reputation, protected by time. The prosecution began by presenting the timeline. Not the official timeline from 1987. The real timeline. The one built from evidence Emily herself preserved. On August 14, 1987, Emily left work after spending weeks investigating suspicious property transfers. She returned home. She recorded a message explaining what she had discovered. She collected evidence. She contacted sources. Then she was lured to the abandoned farmhouse. The people waiting there did not want a conversation. They wanted control. They wanted the evidence. They wanted the investigation to disappear. But Emily had already planned for that possibility. She had created copies. She had hidden information. She had protected the truth, even while knowing she might not survive. The prosecution showed the jury the photograph from the disposable camera. A blurry image. A moment frozen in time. Victor Salazar. Daniel Brooks. Arthur Holloway. Thomas Vance. For men connected by one secret, the defense attempted to challenge the evidence. They argued the photographs were old. The memories were unreliable. The recordings were incomplete. They claimed 40 years had created too many unanswered questions. But the prosecution had expected that argument. They responded with one simple statement. Time did not destroy this evidence. Time preserved it. The courtroom watched as forensic experts explained how DNA was recovered from materials that had been hidden for decades, how fingerprints survived, how damaged recordings were restored, how modern technology gave a voice to someone who could no longer speak. The most emotional moment came when Emily's recovered video was played. The courtroom lights dimmed. The screen turned on. And there she was, 26 years old, alive, looking directly into the camera. The people in the courtroom watched a woman who had been gone for 40 years speak as if no time had passed. Emily said, "If you're watching this, something happened." Her voice filled the room. Her family covered their faces. Some jurors looked down. Even investigators who had heard the recording dozens of times struggled to remain emotionless. Because this was not just evidence. This was Emily Carter herself, a person who had been reduced to a photograph for decades. Now she was speaking again. The trial continued for weeks. Witness after witness described the atmosphere of fear that existed in Red Mesa during the 1980s. Residents who had remained silent finally came forward. They described suspicious property deals, threats, missing documents, unexplained decisions. A former county employee testified that he was ordered to remove files connected to certain properties. He said nobody explained why. They simply told him. Some things are better left alone. Another witness described seeing Sheriff Daniel Brooks meeting privately with Judge Holloway several times during the months before Emily disappeared. At the time, nobody thought anything of it. Now, those meetings became part of the larger pattern. The defense attempted to separate the suspects. They argued there was no proof of a coordinated conspiracy. But the evidence told a different story. The same names appeared repeatedly, the same properties, the same financial connections, the same pattern of silence. The prosecution described it as a chain, each person holding one link. Together, they created a system that allowed the crime to happen. Then came the testimony of Thomas Vance. The courtroom waited as the 70-year-old former maintenance supervisor entered. He looked different from the man seen in photographs from 1987. Older, weaker, but the fear in his eyes remained. For years, Vance had carried the secret alone. He described the night Emily disappeared. He described the farmhouse, the meeting, the confrontation. He described Emily standing in front of people who believed they controlled everything. Then he said something nobody expected. She wasn't scared of them. The courtroom became silent. Vance continued. That was the thing they couldn't understand. She knew what they could do, but she still believed someone would eventually find the truth. Those words became the emotional center of the trial, because they explained why Emily kept fighting. She was not fearless. She was afraid, but she believed fear could not be allowed to decide what happened next. Vance described the final moments inside the farmhouse. He said Emily confronted Holloway. She told him the evidence was already safe. She told him destroying her would not destroy the truth. According to Vance, Holloway responded, "Truth doesn't matter if nobody hears it." That sentence shocked everyone, because for 40 years, that was exactly what had happened. Nobody heard Emily, not because she had failed, because people had worked to silence her, but they failed to understand one thing. Emily had left behind enough pieces, enough evidence, enough questions. Eventually, someone would find them. The trial reached its final days. The jury reviewed everything. The hidden chambers, the recovered evidence, the financial records, the witness testimony, the DNA results, the altered case files, the missing documents. Every piece pointed toward the same conclusion. Emily Carter had discovered a criminal operation. She had attempted to expose it, and she had been silenced because of it. But the story was not ending with the courtroom. Because outside the courthouse, another discovery was about to change how people remembered Emily forever. A discovery hidden in the archives. A document nobody had noticed. A final investigation note written by the detective who originally handled Emily's disappearance. A note that had been buried for decades. And when investigators opened it, they found a confession of a different kind. Not from the killer, not from the conspirators, but from the person who had been closest to finding the truth, and walked away. The forgotten note was discovered inside an old evidence box stored in the state archives. A box nobody had opened in decades. A box labeled with a simple case number. Emily Carter. The handwriting on the document belonged to Detective Robert Hale, the original lead investigator assigned to Emily's disappearance in 1987. For 40 years, Hale had been remembered as the detective who failed to solve the case. The man who could not find the missing reporter. The man who watched the investigation collapse. But the document revealed something different. Something much darker. It was not a report. It was not an official statement. It was a personal confession. A letter Hale wrote shortly before his retirement. He never sent it. He never showed it to anyone. He simply placed it inside the evidence box, waiting. The first line immediately caught investigators' attention. I knew we were looking in the wrong direction. The discovery changed how everyone viewed the original investigation. Hale admitted that within the first week after Emily disappeared, he noticed problems. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. Orders came from above. Search areas were restricted. But he stayed silent, not because he did not care, because he was afraid. Hale wrote that he suspected powerful people were interfering. He suspected the sheriff. He suspected officials inside the county. But every time he pushed for deeper investigation, he was warned. Not directly. Never openly. The pressure came quietly. A transfer request. A lost promotion. A reminder that certain cases were sensitive. Hale described a meeting with Sheriff Brooks days after Emily vanished. Brooks told him, some cases destroy more than one life. At the time, Hale understood the message. The sheriff was not warning him about the danger. He was warning him to stop. The letter explained why Hale never exposed what he knew. He believed the entire department was compromised. He believed speaking out would end his career and possibly put his family at risk. But the guilt followed him. Every year. Every anniversary, every time Emily's family appeared on television asking for answers. Hale wrote, I watched them search for a person I knew we were being prevented from finding. That sentence became one of the most painful revelations of the entire case, because Emily's disappearance was not only about the people who harmed her, it was also about the people who knew something was wrong and stayed silent. The discovery of Hale's confession led investigators to examine his old files. They found more evidence, personal notes, private observations, names he suspected but was never allowed to investigate. One page contained a handwritten list. At the top, people who knew too much. The list included Daniel Brooks, Arthur Holloway, Victor Salazar, Thomas Vance, and one unexpected name, Robert Hale himself. Investigators realized Hale had included himself because he believed his silence made him part of the failure. The note changed public opinion. Many people who had criticized the original investigation began seeing Hale differently. Not as a hero, not as someone innocent, but as someone trapped between fear and responsibility. A person who knew the truth existed but lacked the courage to reveal it. The case became a lesson about silence. Because crimes are not always protected by weapons. Sometimes they are protected by fear. Sometimes by reputation. Sometimes by people convincing themselves they have no choice. But the truth eventually creates its own pressure. And 40 years later, the pressure became impossible to ignore. The final evidence presented in court came from the forensic examination of Emily's personal belongings. Among the items recovered from Red Rock Canyon was her old camera. Investigators had originally believed the film inside was destroyed, but advanced recovery techniques revealed additional images. Images nobody had seen. The first showed the farmhouse interior. The second showed documents spread across a table. The third showed Emily herself, taking notes, working, searching. The fourth image showed something that shocked investigators. A clock on the farmhouse wall. The time, 11:18 p.m. That detail mattered, because the official report stated Emily disappeared before 10 p.m. Another lie, another false record, another piece of the timeline destroyed. Then came the final photograph, the most important image of the entire investigation. It showed a document, only partially visible, but enough could be read. A property transfer agreement, signed by Judge Arthur Holloway, approved by Sheriff Daniel Brooks, witnessed by Victor Salazar, and dated August 14, 1987. The night Emily disappeared, the photograph proved they were together. The photograph proved they were connected, and the photograph proved Emily had been telling the truth. The courtroom watched as the image appeared on the screen. For a moment, nobody moved. After 40 years, a single photograph accomplished what hundreds of interviews could not. It showed the conspiracy existed. It showed Emily had uncovered it. It showed why she became a target. The final arguments began. The prosecution described Emily Carter as a woman who discovered a truth powerful people wanted hidden. The defense described the evidence as old and incomplete, but the jury had seen too much. They had heard too much. They had watched Emily speak from the past. They had listened to her warnings. They had seen the evidence she protected. After several days of deliberation, the decision arrived. Thomas Vance was found guilty on multiple charges connected to Emily's disappearance. The official investigation concluded that Arthur Holloway, Daniel Brooks, and Victor Salazar orchestrated the operation that led to Emily's death. Although they were never able to face trial, their names were permanently connected to the crime. The verdict did not bring Emily back. Nothing could, but it changed something that had remained broken for 40 years. The official story. For decades, people asked, where did Emily Carter go? Now they knew. They knew why she disappeared. They knew who tried to silence her. They knew what she had discovered. And most importantly, they knew Emily had never given up. Even when everything was taken from her, she left behind a path, a trail of evidence, a message, a promise that the truth would survive. But as investigators prepared to close the case permanently, one final mystery remained. A question that haunted everyone involved. Emily had hidden evidence in the farmhouse, the depot, the chapel, the canyon. She had planned for nearly every possibility. But there was one thing nobody understood. How did Emily know, before she disappeared, that nobody would believe her? The answer was hidden in the final page of her notebook, a page investigators had not been able to read. Until now, the final page of Emily Carter's notebook had been overlooked for 40 years. Not because investigators ignored it, not because they failed to search, but because the page itself appeared empty. A blank sheet, nothing written, nothing recorded, nothing that suggested it contained any information. For decades, it remained exactly where it had been stored, a forgotten page inside a forgotten notebook, until modern forensic technology changed everything. Specialists examined the paper under ultraviolet light, then infrared imaging, then chemical analysis. Slowly, faint markings began appearing, not visible to the human eye, not visible under ordinary conditions. But they were there. Emily had written on the page. She had simply hidden the message. The first words appeared like ghosts from the past. "If you found this," they failed. Investigators stared at the screen. Because the message was not a warning. It was a prediction. Emily believed the truth would eventually be discovered. Even if it took decades. Even if everyone around her failed. Even if the people responsible believed they had won. The hidden writing continued. Emily described the final stage of her investigation. She explained that she had discovered someone inside the system was feeding information to the people she was investigating. She did not write the name. Instead, she wrote, "The person closest to the investigation is the person who controls what is seen." Immediately, investigators thought of Daniel Brooks, the sheriff, the man who controlled reports, evidence access, search locations, public statements. But then Emily wrote something unexpected. She mentioned another person, someone nobody had focused on, someone who appeared to have nothing to do with the corruption. A court clerk. Her name was Margaret Ellis. In 1987, Margaret worked in the district courthouse. She processed documents, filed records, matin archive, a person most people would never notice. But Emily noticed, because Margaret had access to everything. Every property transfer, every legal filing, every sealed document. Emily wrote, "She doesn't make decisions. She makes things disappear." The discovery forced investigators to reopen another part of the case. The courthouse archives. They reviewed decades-old filing records. They compared original documents with copies. And they found a pattern. Hundreds of files had been removed. Not destroyed. Moved. Transferred. Hidden under different classifications. Margaret Ellis had access to every one of them. When investigators located her, she was living quietly in Colorado. 79 years old. Retired. No criminal history. No public attention. When questioned about Emily Carter, she immediately became emotional. She admitted she remembered Emily. She admitted Emily had visited the courthouse several times. She admitted Emily asked questions about missing property records. But she denied helping the conspiracy. At first. Then detectives showed her the evidence. A courthouse access log. August 14, 1987. 9:15 p.m. Margaret Ellis entered the records room. 9:42 p.m. She removed a sealed property file. 10:03 p.m. She made a phone call to Judge Holloway's office. The same night, Emily disappeared. Margaret looked at the documents for several minutes. Then she quietly said, "I was scared." It was the same explanation investigators had heard before. Fear. Pressure. Silence. Margaret admitted she had discovered irregularities years earlier. She knew some files were being altered. She knew certain documents were being removed. But she convinced herself it was not her responsibility. She was only a clerk. She was only following orders. Until Emily arrived. Emily was different. She asked questions nobody else asked. She noticed details everyone ignored. Margaret said Emily frightened her. Not because Emily was dangerous, because Emily was determined. She knew the young reporter would continue. She knew Emily would eventually expose everything. And that terrified the people involved. Margaret provided investigators with one final piece of information. A document she had hidden for 40 years. She said she could never destroy it, but she could never release it either. Inside a sealed envelope was the original property transfer agreement from the farmhouse. The one Emily photographed. The one connecting Holloway, Brooks, and Salazar. But the document contained something new. A fourth signature. A signature nobody had seen before. The name was clear. Richard Whitmore. Emily Carter's own father. The discovery shocked everyone. For 40 years, Richard Whitmore had been remembered as a grieving father. A man who searched endlessly for his daughter. A man who demanded answers. Now investigators faced an impossible question. Why was Emily's father's signature on the document? The investigation turned immediately. Was Richard involved? Was Emily investigating her own family? Had she discovered something even more personal than anyone imagined? The answer came from Emily's hidden notes. She had written about it. Not directly, but enough. She knew the signature existed. She knew her father's name was connected. But she also wrote, he was used. The investigators dug deeper. The truth was devastating. Richard Whitmore had unknowingly signed an old property document years earlier. A document related to land his family once owned. The signature was copied, manipulated, used as part of the fraudulent transfer system. Richard was not involved. He was another victim. Another person whose life had been affected by the conspiracy. Emily had discovered that someone she loved had been used as a piece in the operation. And instead of hiding it, she investigated it. That discovery changed how Emily's family viewed the case. Her brother Daniel admitted the hardest part was realizing how much danger Emily faced alone. She was protecting everyone, he said, even people who didn't know they needed protection. The final hidden pages revealed Emily's last thoughts before meeting the people who would betray her. She wrote, I know they are watching me. I know this may be the last thing I do. But if I walk away, they win. The final line was unfinished. The ink stopped halfway through the sentence. Experts believed Emily was interrupted while writing. The incomplete sentence read, the truth must, and then nothing. No ending. No final word. Just silence. A silence that lasted 40 years. But now investigators understood. Emily was never trying to save herself. She was trying to save the truth. And that truth had finally survived long enough to be heard. The case was considered solved. The names were known. The evidence was complete. The official records were corrected. But one final piece of Emily Carter's story remained. The question that followed the investigation everywhere. After everything she uncovered, after everything she knew, why did Emily still walk into that farmhouse? Why didn't she run? Why didn't she disappear? The answer was hidden in a recording nobody had played yet. A recording found inside the final evidence box. A recording Emily made only minutes before she left her apartment. And on that tape, she explained exactly why she went. The recording was the last piece of Emily Carter's story. A small cassette, hidden inside the final evidence container. Ignored for decades because investigators believed it contained only damaged audio. But after the restoration process was completed, a voice emerged. Emily's voice, clearer than anyone expected. The recording began with several seconds of silence, then the sound of a room, a chair moving, a deep breath, and Emily speaking. Not like a reporter, not like an investigator, but like someone talking to herself before making a decision she already knew could change everything. I know this might be a mistake. A pause. But if I don't go, they disappear forever. The words immediately changed the way investigators viewed her final moments. Emily was not walking into the farmhouse because she believed she was safe. She knew she might not return. She went because she believed the meeting was her only chance. The recording continued. Emily explained that someone had contacted her. Someone claiming to have proof. Proof that would expose everyone involved. At first, Emily did not trust the person. She had learned not to trust easily. Too many people had lied. Too many records had been changed. Too many doors had closed. But the person on the phone knew details only someone inside the operation could know. They mentioned documents, names, locations, things Emily had never shared publicly. That convinced her. Someone inside wanted out. Someone wanted the truth revealed. Investigators believed that person was likely Deputy Michael Reeves, the man who later admitted he tried to help her. The recording showed Emily was not careless. She was calculating. She created backup plans. She left copies. She documented everything. She understood the risk. But she also understood something else. If nobody acted, the corruption would continue. More families would lose land. More records would disappear. More people would remain silent. Emily believed she had reached the point where staying quiet was more dangerous than speaking. The tape continued. I keep thinking about my mother. Her voice became softer. I keep thinking about what happens if I don't come back. A long pause followed. Then she said, but I know what happens if nobody does anything. That sentence became one of the most important moments in the entire investigation. Because it revealed the choice Emily made. She was not chasing a story. She was protecting people she would never meet. She was 26 years old. She had no authority, no protection, No guarantee anyone would believe her. Only evidence. Only courage. Only the belief that someone had to act. The recording then revealed another shocking detail. Emily had already prepared a letter for her family. She recorded instructions about where to find it. The letter was discovered months later among her belongings. But nobody understood its importance until the final investigation. Inside, Emily wrote about fear, about doubt, about knowing she was fighting against people with power. But she also wrote about something else. Hope. She believed ordinary people could still make a difference. She believed the truth could survive even when powerful people tried to bury it. That belief became the foundation of the entire case. The final evidence review revealed that Emily had hidden information in 5 separate locations: the farmhouse, the railroad depot, St. Michael's Chapel, Red Rock Canyon, her apartment. Each location contained a different piece. None was enough alone. Together, they created the complete story. Investigators later said Emily had unknowingly created one of the most sophisticated evidence preservation systems they had ever seen from a civilian. She understood investigation. She understood human behavior. She understood that people lie, but evidence does not. The trial moved toward its conclusion. The final witness was not a detective, not a prosecutor, not a forensic expert. It was Emily herself. Through recordings, through journals, through photographs, through the evidence she left behind. Her voice filled the courtroom one final time. The jury listened to a woman who had been silent for 4 decades. A woman who had no opportunity to defend herself, no opportunity to explain. Until now, the prosecution ended with Emily's final recorded sentence. The sentence she spoke before leaving her apartment. "If they take me away, don't search for me first." A pause. "Search for what I found." The courtroom remained silent because everyone understood the meaning. Emily knew the evidence mattered more than herself. She knew people might try to turn her into a missing person story, a mystery, a headline. But she wanted people to understand the real story, the truth she discovered, the people she exposed, the system she challenged. After the trial, the state officially reopened every property case connected to the corruption network. Hundreds of families received answers. Some received land returned to them. Others received compensation. But for many, the damage could never truly be repaired. Because the conspiracy had lasted decades. It had changed lives. It had destroyed trust. And it had taken Emily Carter. The abandoned farmhouse became a symbol, not of the crime itself, but of what survived. The building was eventually preserved as part of a historical investigation site. Visitors came not to see where a tragedy happened. They came to remember the person who refused to let the truth disappear. Emily's family donated her notebooks and recordings to a state archive. They wanted future generations to understand what happened. Not because they wanted people to remember the criminals, but because they wanted people to remember Emily, a young woman who asked questions, a young woman who followed evidence, a young woman who believed silence was not an option. Years after the case was solved, investigators were asked what the most important discovery was. Many expected them to mention DNA, the fingerprints, the recordings, the hidden documents, but the lead investigator gave a different answer. The most important discovery was Emily herself, because without her decisions before she disappeared, there would have been nothing left to find. That statement captured the entire case. The evidence did not solve the mystery alone. Emily did. She created the path. She left the clues. She made sure the truth had somewhere to go. 40 years after she vanished, the world finally understood what happened. But the story of Emily Carter continued to affect people because it represented something larger. A question every cold case asks: how long can a secret survive? How long can people hide the truth? How long can silence last? In Emily's case, the answer was 40 years, but the silence was never permanent, because beneath the desert floor, inside forgotten buildings, hidden in old documents, the truth was waiting, and eventually, someone found it.